All right, welcome to the Krug Show after the World Series. Man, I was hoping the Yankees would get it done, but no, Freddie Freeman with the grand slam in the ninth, and the Dodgers win game one. Join us, the Krug Show. Glen Kuiper is going to be in the house. Ned Colletti's going to be in the house. Dan Coach Emilio is going to be in the house. It's going to be a great night. Join us right now. Oh, get it rolling on the Krug Show after game one of the World Series. Goes to the Dodgers. 6-3, the final in 10 innings. What a game. Oh, my goodness. That was an incredible baseball game. Welcome to the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And tonight's live stream is brought to you by Mancini's Sleep World. Mancini's is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. They offer a 120-night guarantee with a range of brands and price points. I'm loving my Mancini's bed. With Mancini's, you get free next-day delivery. So click the link below or go to sleepworld.com. Find a bed that works for you, whether shopping online or visiting in store. If you're a listener of the Krug Show, a viewer of the Krug Show, just use the code Krug10, Krug 10, and you'll get 10% off. That's Krug 10, and you'll get 10% off in store or online at sleepworld.com. All right, we get things rolling. We're joined tonight by Glen Kuiper, longtime voice of the A's, brother of Jeff and Dwayne Kuiper, and of course, great baseball man, and of course Dan Coach Emilio is with us as well. We're efforting to catch up with Ned Colletti, who is going to hopefully join us as well. And I'm sure Ned's phone is blowing up because the Dodgers came from behind and win game one of the World Series. That was an epic finish. I mean, it looked like the Yankees were going to win 3-2 in 10 innings. And then, you got Ohtani coming up in the ninth, and Freddie Freeman hits just an absolute titanic shot into the middle of the bleachers with Taylor, Edman, and Betts aboard, and a 3-2 deficit became a 6-3 Dodger victory and a 1-0 lead in the World Series in a best of seven. And guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me. And Glenn, why don't we start with you? I mean, unbelievable finish. Giants fans aren't necessarily thrilled by that one, but this was billed as a clash of titans, and man, game one did not disappoint.
No, it didn't. And, thinking about this World Series before tonight's game, and I looked back at other World Series matchups, and I tell you what, I had a hard time finding a better matchup with just all the things going on with the superstars and the two teams, East Coast, West Coast, the whole thing. But boy, you can go a long ways back before you find a more anticipated and probably a better matchup than this one. I mean, really, I had trouble finding one. I thought about, Phillies and the Yankees in 2009, but okay, that's a good matchup. But this, to me, is at a different level. What
comes close? I mean, maybe 86 Mets, Red Sox, maybe, or Dodgers, Yankees in the 70s from the,
before the series even starts, where you're just looking at all the ingredients involved. And boy, oh boy, I don't know that you can find a more anticipated matchup. So, and then game one obviously didn't let us down, which is great. I mean, I was locked in. I kept score. I haven't kept score in a year and a half, to be quite honest with you, but I kept score tonight. And it was kind of fun. And, that keeps you in the game and all that. But no, it did not disappoint. And, anything less than this series going 7 games, that would be disappointing because these two teams are so evenly matched, and just the smallest thing could turn this series, one way or the other. But it was Freddie Freeman tonight. And how can you not think about, Kirk Gibson, right? Many, many years ago, because it had the same type of feel to it.
No doubt. That's exactly what I thought.
Yes, I thought the same thing.
I was a freshman in college, and I was going to Sac State, and I was at a Davis Sonoma State football game that night, game 1 of the World Series. And my sister's boyfriend at the time, who eventually became her husband, was a Dodger fan, and we were watching the game like at a UC Davis like snack bar TV. There was a TV at the snack bar. We were watching the game, and I'm like, "Oh, here comes Eck. Let's watch the final 3 outs." Eck is, we'll put him away, really, really quick, because that was the way he did it. And Mike Davis drew the walk, and then Gibson came to the plate. And heck, we all know now he had that scouting report line. I thought that was genius too. I mean, some Dodger scout knew. I mean, this is why I love baseball so much. Some Dodger scout, deep in a scouting report, had, when Eckersley gets to a 3-2 count, he likes to finish you off with the backdoor slider to lefties that runs back across the plate. And Gibson had read the report. He was looking for that pitch, and he didn't miss it. I mean, it's lore. And to me, it's one of the great moments, I think, one of my favorite moments in baseball history, not just for the moment, because my favorite baseball player that's not a Giant is Dennis Eckersley. And for the humanity that Eckersley had, for the flaw, we all have flaws as people. He was as flawed as any, and he had problems off the field, but he sat there, and La Russa said it. He stood there at his locker, and for 2 hours plus, backdoor slider, answering those questions, didn't run from it. And I know, Glenn, that he was probably I know he was a former teammate of your brother, and I'm sure Dennis is probably one of your brother's favorite players as well. But there's just something about Dennis that's so unique. I mean, everything that happened with his family and Manning and his wife, and just the fact that he could be so comfortable in his own skin. I've always loved Dennis Eckersley, and he served it up that night, but he also faced the music and showed the way a pro handles failure. To me, it was obviously a great baseball moment, but even a greater moment for him.
Yeah, he's one of my all-time favorites. He lives very close to us out here in the East Bay, and I have become pretty close with Dennis as well. We go to dinner, our wives occasionally, and he's just the best. I mean, he'll laugh about it, right?
Does he talk about your moss and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
he's got great moss. He's got
he's a classic. Just one of my favorite people. Right next to Ned Colletti is one of my favorite people, actually.
And Ned is just confirmed that he will be joining us in a couple minutes. He's just trying to get dialed up, so Ned will be joining us. But yeah, I mean, Eck.
Yeah, right there.
How
can you not think of Gibson and Eckersley tonight after watching that?
You're invisible, man.
And you know what? And Eck and Gibson have become friends, and they acknowledge. And I think the thing with Eck acknowledges that he is part of maybe one of the greatest moments in World Series history. Really, I mean, it is. There's no question about that. But he has the ability to acknowledge that and be okay with it. And listen, there's a lot of players, former players, that would not be so happy to acknowledge being in his spot. They would have the ass a little bit, if you know what I'm saying, because people keep talking about it, and you're always on the wrong end of it, and you see highlights but not him. He sort of, accepts it, and he's okay with it. He really truly is okay with it, because he looks at it in the bigger scope of baseball, that I was part of one of the greatest moments in World Series history. Now, I was on the wrong end of it, but now that he just turned 70. He just had a birthday. He said, now that I'm 70, I'm fine with it. It was a great moment. It was great for baseball, and I'm okay being part of it, even though I'm the one that, listen, he got walked off, right?
Right. He was the GOAT in that moment, but you know what? He's like, you know what? I've had a lot of good things happen in my baseball career, and if that's the price that I got to pay, I'll pay that price. I love Dennis Eckersley and the perspective that he's shown. We welcome in Ned Colletti, former Dodger general manager, former Giants assistant general manager. Ned, thanks again for joining us. I knew I wanted to have it's been a busy week. I've been talking a lot of Niners and Cowboys. But you know what? I knew I wanted to have a live stream after Game 1 of the World Series, and I'm really glad that I did decide to do this, and glad that I invited you guys, because this was an all-timer. This was a one for the ages. Ned, you have an emotional investment to the Dodger franchise, because you built some of the guys that are still, built that roster a few years ago, and a lot of those guys are still there. What was it like for you to watch this game and the way it ended?
It was, even from the couch, it was nerve-wracking, Glen, it's so good to see you.
It's great to see you, man. You are one of my favorites. It's great to see you.
Yep. And Danny, good to see you as well. And Larry.
Ned.
It was a classic. And even no matter how it would have ended, it would have been a classic. But the way that it ended, just phenomenal. Sometimes it's your year, and I think that I'd be very surprised. I was telling people all week, I'd be very surprised the Dodgers didn't win this in 5 or 6 games, and tonight kind of shows you why. Going back to the Gibson situation, I was young in my career, and I would work for the network during the postseason, helping them with their pregame show, helping them with their postgame show. So where I was when that ball was hit was in the first base dugout at Dodger Stadium, the Oakland dugout. And to my right, about 10, 12 feet, was Tony, and next to him was Dave Duncan. And that's where I saw Gibson's home run from, was that
really?
Point. Yes. And the old dugout had just a couple of stairways up to the field. And I had no choice but to go up the runway, which was a long runway, through the visiting clubhouse, and then through the dugout club seats that were behind home plate. They had a gate back there, because I had to get Gibby for the post game show. I was in the Oakland dugout. We were ready to interview Dave Stewart, who had pitched great that game and had left with the lead. And so that's where I happened to be for history. And I had no choice but to go the direction I went, because here comes Tony and Dunk and the Oakland A's. So I had to go in the other direction. But later that day, and I was with Dennis in Chicago for a while before he went to Oakland.
Right.
And, he did stay. He stayed around, and, I went to see him afterwards, and he just sat in a clubhouse, in a tiny visitors clubhouse, and just took one question after another. And I walked by, and our eyes caught, and he looked at me and he goes, "Ned, how about me? For as long as they're showing baseball, there I'm going to be hanging that slider, that backdoor slider." And Mel Didier was the scout who in the advanced meeting
had the report,
told Lasorda and the team that if Eck gets in that spot, you got to look for this pitch.
Wow.
Which is, I was just saying right before you jumped on, Ned, that's one of the reasons I love baseball. It's just because, it's such the thinking man's sport. I mean, Kirk Gibson, wasn't just in the clubhouse taking hacks. He was also had that report open, and he was looking at the report because he knew he was going to face that pitcher. And I think the clubbie's name was Mitch Leary. Does that sound right?
Mitch Poole. I just talked to him the other day. Mitch Poole was soft tossing to him down in a little cage that they had adjacent to their hallway from the clubhouse to the dugout. And he's the guy that went out and told Tommy, "Hey, this guy can swing the bat. If you need him, he can swing the bat." And that's what started
and then not only that, it was a genius moment for broadcast too, because Vin, and as Vin can only describe it, basically told us in the story, only in Hollywood, I believe, is the documentary that came out on this. That was really good. And Vin's like, "I told the guy in the truck, hey, when we come back, just follow me. I'm going to paint the picture of the dugout." And he's like, "You're looking at the Dodger dugout and you're not seeing Kirk Gibson, and that's because it was an amazing moment. And then of course, Davis walks and Gibby comes up and he hits one out. The ball that was hit tonight by Freddie Freeman, a lot of the same trajectory, a lot of the same. I mean, how could you not? How could you watch that in Game 1 of the World Series, not Game 2, not Game 3, and not be like, wow? I mean, the parallels are really quite dramatic. And by the way, we shouldn't ignore Danny. What's
Joe
that?
Davis says, Gibby, meet Freddie. I mean, at the moment.
That was a great call. It was a great call. Yeah. Gibby,
amazing.
Gibby meet Freddie. That was, I heard that too. I was like, he's really good. Yes. But that was a good call. I mean, he brought it together from something that happened 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. That's why he's announcing the World Series. But that was pretty cool how he pulled it together.
Glenn, is that something that you do as an announcer for bigger games where you start to think of scenarios, or is that you can't go that route and it has to be off the cuff? Because that's a difficult thing to do, and I would imagine it could kind of screw you up if you did it wrong or if you had too many thoughts.
I always, if there's something in front of you that could be big, you start thinking a little bit about what you may want to do. If the guy's got a no-hitter in the 8th inning, I mean, I think like for Joel Davis, he must have at some point in the late inning, or maybe in that 10th inning, I would guess, the Gibson thing popped into his head, and I know I do. If I'm doing a game, you think a little bit like, okay, is there someplace I can go to, but you don't want to screw it up either.
Right.
You don't want to
be too scripted,
and you don't want to sound scripted. But there's small things that you can do to maybe get yourself ready, because I mean, I've always felt like the art of an announcer, if you want to be really good, is you got to be good in the big moments. Because most big league announcers can call innings 1 through 8, ground ball to short, base hit to right. I mean, listen, we all can do that, but I think the guys that separate themselves are the ones when there is that big moment that they're able to hit it and be really good at it. We have guys out here that are very good at it. My brother's really good at it. He has been for a long time. So you got to be ready for that big moment, because in baseball it happens like that. Right? Nope, there it is. It's a home run or whatever. You got to be able to hit it, but it's okay to think a little bit ahead. Say, okay, let's not screw this up. What could I do to, And in Joel Davis thing, he said, hey, he may be thinking, would it be great to get the Gibson thing in here somehow? And he did it perfectly.
Danny, give me your perspective.
We cheat a little bit, yeah.
Well, hey, that's all right. That's all right. What's Kruk say? If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
That's exactly right.
Danny, Danny, of course, Glenn and Ned knows Danny, but Glenn doesn't. But Danny does a phenomenal post-game Giants live stream, and he comes on after a lot of games and watches a lot of baseball and discusses a lot of baseball, and is based out in Arizona. Danny, what did you think watching this one? I mean, you've watched an awful lot of games this year. That was a pretty special finish.
Wow, a classic. I mean, this was Ali Frazier in Manila. This is the thrill in Manila. This is the clash of the Titans. I mean, we're looking at 5 sure Hall of Famers, locks. I mean, the Dodgers' first 3 in the order, and then you got Judge and Soto. I mean, there's 5 Hall of Famers. There's probably a couple more when their careers are done on these 2 teams. This is unbelievable baseball. I mean, as a Giants fan, I love baseball, but you don't like the Dodgers, but you want the best teams if you're a true baseball fan to watch. And you couldn't ask for a better World Series, in my opinion. I mean, I called this thing in May. I mean, I predicted originally Baltimore, Philly at the beginning of the preseason, in spring training, but around late May, I said, this is lining up to be Dodgers, Yankees, and you could kind of see it coming. And what a matchup. And, what's really crazy about this is we see, Fernando pass away a couple days ago. And
Right.
if this thing goes game 6 and the Dodgers are winning 3-2, it's Fernando's birthday, game 6 in LA, November 1st. Would that be a crazy finish for the Dodgers this year to win it in game 6? The spirit of Fernando will be all over Dodger Stadium.
What a special man he was too. And Ned, you probably knew him best of all of us, but I had an opportunity one time to dine with Fernando in the Giants, at the ballpark in the media room or in the lunchroom upstairs. And there was only one seat at the table, and he came in, and I'm like, "Oh, please sit down." And what a sweetheart of a guy. I mean, that is that Fernando Valenzuela was a sweetheart of a human being, and just a very, very, humble. The story of where he came from, and Mike Brito and Jerry Royce missing the start on opening day, and we all know what Fernando mania was like. I mean, there was Mark the Bird Fidrich, there was Fernando. There aren't too many guys who have a mania, and there was truly 20,000 extra people in the seats for every one of his starts.
Started season 8-0 with 5 shutouts.
He was remarkable. I can remember as a little kid playing a lot of strikeout with the tennis ball, and it was kind of cool to kind of look to the heavens. Could you look up like Fernando looked up? He was very, very special. But Ned, you knew him, so I mean, I only spent that one meal with him, but for everybody that I talked to just said, man, Fernando was just such a sweet, nice guy, and he really was.
It was quiet, classy, understated. He knew who he was. He knew the history that he had written, but he wasn't going to talk about it. He wasn't going to brag about it. I've been in LA, I think 18, 19 years now. And, I don't know that there was another player in the last 40 or 50 years that changed a city and a fan base as much as he did. I mean, perhaps Ohtani will be the next with Japan and the Dodgers, which has already had a bit of momentum with Hideo Nomo and others to follow. But he changed Los Angeles, and the Hispanic community is so vibrant and love the Dodgers so much. And you wonder if he wasn't a Dodger or he didn't come to the big leagues, if it would be the same. But his impact, I don't know of anybody in the last 50 years that impacted a fan base, a city, an organization as much as him. He's also one of those people, one of those athletes. You don't need to mention the last name.
Right.
The first name tells you who he is.
Yeah.
One name guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say this too, Ned. What's amazing is I read about Fernando. Very humble man, as you talked about, but very a man of honor.
Yes.
When the Dodgers signed him, they signed him for $120,000. He got 20, and the Mexican team that got the 100,000. Just a few days later, the Yankees, of all teams, came with a $150,000 offer.
Supposedly, it was like 15 minutes later.
Yeah, which would have given the Fernando another 30 grand in his pocket. And he came from this little small village in Mexico, the youngest of 12 children. I mean, you think that 50,000 extra 30 would be very tempting in late 70s, right? Yet he honored his commitment. And so that tells you a lot about the man.
And you know what, too, like what Ned was talking about, if you think about Fernando mania and how quickly it hit, but think about how many new baseball fans he created.
Yes.
Dodger fans, but baseball fans as well, especially
Yes.
in the Hispanic community. And now, there's 20, 30,000 extra people for every one of his starts. And this goes on for how long? 10, 12 years. So think about how many people became Fernando fans and Dodger fans and baseball fans. And now those people are 40, 50, 60 years old, and their kids are, I'm sure, Dodger fans and baseball fans. So that's the kind of impact he had. And when you look at it in a bigger picture where you're just creating baseball fans, and he created part of a generation of probably new Dodger fans.
No
and
doubt.
Not a lot of people do that. And I always say that about what happened with the Giants here when they built the new ballpark. And now all of these 15, 20-year-old kids are in 2000, they're going to that Pac Bell Park, and this place is great. It's awesome. I love it. Well, now those people fell in love with the ballpark and Giants. Well, now those people are 40, 50 years old, and they're taking their kids. So that happens, and it's a real thing. And once you get generations worked in and they're following and they become fans, then that doesn't change. Those people don't get rid of their team and not be Dodger fans or Giants fans anymore. So things like that are such a big deal. And I think that's what baseball has in its soul more than other sports.
And also I think it has to be said that, I know when you were going down to LA, I remember the Dodgers had a slogan that year or right around the same time called Think Blue, right? And I remember you sent me like a DVD of the Think Blue, and I watched it, and I didn't realize the story, but a lot of the Dodgers were obviously very popular when they came over in 58, but there was a lot of controversy with Dodger Stadium, and a lot of the Mexican Americans that lived in Echo Park and on those hills, whose homes dotted those hills, had their homes bulldozed. They were given vouchers for a housing development that never actually got built, and so there was a fracture there. And Fernando was a big part of healing that fracture. And if you can chart it, Dodgers always drew well, but they really took off when Fernando came in 81 and went from that point on to like 3 million plus annually. And he really had a lot to do with the healing process. I think the Dodgers were not viewed as a all encompassing. They were viewed more exclusively, and he changed that and won over lots and lots of new fans. And it absolutely was a mania. I can remember watching him pitch at Candlestick, and, Candlestick, they did not draw that well. It was, Fernando and the Dodgers. I mean, huge numbers of people would show up for those games. So he had a huge impact. We were drawing the comparisons between 88 and this year. In 88, the A's were done after that game one. Are the Yankees done?
I don't know if they're done. I just don't know if they're as good.
Yeah.
I
mean,
that bullpen, you live on a string with that bullpen.
Yeah, speaking of bullpen, Ned, were you surprised that they brought in Cortez and not Tim Hill in that situation? I mean, Tim Hill's a tough guy on lefties.
Part of the beauty of the game is that, I mean, we saw what we saw, and we're going to talk about it for as long as we're talking baseball forever. But, in all these games, there's so many different things that happen earlier in the game. This could have been a 3-run game.
Right.
This didn't have to be a 1-run game. The Dodgers could have won it too. They could have been, it could have been an 8.5 inning game.
Yeah.
So, the drama of the moment, it's something that will go down in history. But there's always, because of the game, and as we all love the game, and it's because there's so many turning points in it. Dodgers had, I think, runners in scoring position 3 straight innings with nobody out and couldn't do anything, with it. So all sorts of things. The ground ball to second base. You got to get an out on. There's got to be an out in there someplace, right?
Yeah.
So
I thought the play Edman saving that run.
Oh yeah, there's another
one. And then Ohtani taking third on the scoop by then they get the sac fly.
And that was a terrible. That's a terrible play by the Yankees. I mean that's simple. If Gleyber Torres. I mean, I remember being taught this in high school. If you know the ball's going to short hop you, just take a couple steps in and catch it before it short hops you. You can't let the ball. And where's Rizzo?
Yes.
I mean, but I think in like looking at these two teams, they're very evenly matched. But But it sounds to me, in reading about them and seeing them during the year a little bit, that the one thing that hurt the Yankees a little bit is they're not as fundamentally sound as the Dodgers are. And I thought you saw that tonight. We're just talking about that the play with Soto throwing it in. And I know that's just one play, but if you look at that and then you look at Edman's diving play, which saved a run, so it's those little things that Ned's talking about. And when you really dissect a baseball game like we're doing, and maybe you don't do it as much during the regular season, but when you start dissecting a baseball game, it's amazing what you find out, how the game could have been different.
Yeah. There's probably a dozen plays in this game.
Oh, absolutely.
At least that turned it one way or the other.
And you start looking at it really close. And I think that's what, baseball is great. But, I go to the 10th inning in the bottom of I don't know how you guys feel. I'd like to get your opinion on it, but with Cortez is in first and second, he gets or second and third, he gets the out on Ohtani. I've always felt this way. I'm always a little leery of walking the bases loaded. Now I understand. Let's get to Freeman, lefty on lefty. I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that strategy.
Just because there's no margin for error, is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yeah, because I know Betts is the hitter. Listen, I get it, right? It's pick your poison. You got Hall of Famers coming up. But my thing is if you walk the bases loaded, your margin for error just shrinks big time. But if you just think of the at-bat itself, Nestor Cortez does not want to fall behind. You fall behind, bases loaded, game on the line, so get it in first pitch. I don't know. I just think it puts a lot of pressure on the pitcher, the defense, everybody, when you walk a guy to load the bases.
Well, here I'm going to go one deeper on the walk.
Lux?
Gavin Lux.
Yep, Lux.
Walks.
Well,
when you walk somebody at that point in the game, especially, and Gavin Lux is a decent player, but is he going to beat you? Not, you're not getting, you're thinking he's not going to beat you. Yeah. But when you walk somebody and you're at the bottom of the order, and now you're going to turn the order over.
Yep.
That to me was it. The game was going to end somehow with the Dodgers walking it off.
Yeah.
Because you can't walk people that part of the order that turns the order over and puts the tying run on base.
And you know what? That's going to be something that I think you can watch really closely this whole series, because it pertains to the Yankees as well. You got to get the bottom guys in the order out.
Yes.
Because, hey, we know what happens at the top of these two orders. So,
another big thing was, you think about this, you think at the time you're thinking, but Ohtani with Verdugo falling out of play, it brings in Cortez. He's staying in to face Betts with first.
Is this true, by the way? Did Cortez hadn't pitched in 37 days?
Yes,
correct.
Yeah, they just put him on the roster. Yeah.
So here's another with the Verdugo catch. When you look at the replay of that, they have the big nets up now to protect the fans from foul balls. If he is 4 feet closer to home plate, he bounces off the net. He doesn't go out of play. So you got first and second. Right. You have a totally different dynamic.
Totally.
You're not actually walking.
If it's first and second, they're not walking Mookie.
Right. They're facing Mookie.
When you look at the 3 runs that scored ahead of Freddie on that grand slam, you got 2 walks and an infield single.
Yeah.
That's who scored.
Yeah. And again, that you start looking at those little plays, Ned. I thought the Edman base hit. I thought the second baseman should have made the play.
Absolutely.
I mean,
he dove over the ball.
But he didn't.
Well, you also took out Torres.
Yeah, they did, for a pitch runner.
For Cabrera. Yes. And Cabrera he's not really a second baseman. He's more of he's kind of a utility guy. Doesn't have a home.
Yeah, and they put Dominguez into pinch run.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But I didn't think, it's not an easy play, but I didn't think he had to dive for it. I thought he could have stayed up and backhand. Again, that's the stuff we're talking about.
there's
Little-
something
The ball went under his chest, not on,
Yes.
not past his glove.
right.
Yep.
Right. No, I mean he
So
had
what if
plenty
he
of
fields it clean? Fields it clean. It's probably not going to be double play, but it's going to be 2 outs
That's
and a
right.
runner at first with
It
Otani.
changes every dynamic to the
Changes
game.
the
We're just
whole-
talking
the
about
whole
one
inning.
Sure does.
Unbelievable.
I,
Um,
I
What I
Verdugo
love
hits the
about
net,
baseball
doesn't fall
is it-
into the stands.
the other thing is that these things happen in a June 7th game, and it's like there's no drama at all. When you introduce October, every 90-foot mistake is just magnified. To me, it takes a very entertaining game and makes it riveting. I mean, I think baseball postseason is riveting. I love baseball in the regular season. We all do, right? It's like baseball's got different tempos. You got the spring training tempo, you got regular season tempo, you got September tempo, and then there's October. And the same game that you wouldn't even notice a little, 90-foot mistake here or there in July or August. In September, or more importantly in October, it's like it's not magnified. It's like becomes baseball lore. It's something we remember for forever.
Well,
It just
look
it's
at Ned.
incredible.
Ned said it earlier. He's not nervous on his couch on June 7th watching a game, but in October, every pitch you're like, it's so tense. And it's what I love about baseball is you could see anything can happen on any pitch. And then how about this? The year Freddie Freeman's had with his son.
Oh yeah.
To be the hero. And, we still see highlights of Kirk Gibson every year. This is going to be played back for years and years, as long as we live. Freddie Freeman. And if the Dodgers win this, kind of like they did in '88 with Gibson's shot, Freeman is going to be remembered in history. I mean, and you can't help but really feel good for a guy who's been through what he's been through, to almost lose his little boy. Anybody who has children knows that that's the worst thing in the world, to see your son or daughter suffer. And I'm happy for the guy that he was the hero. And I was pulling for the Yankees, but you know what? If anybody's gonna be a hero, why not Freddie Freeman?
And you know what? You find too is like Ned. I mean, these guys, but I don't know Freddie Freeman, but I look at him and I listen to him and I go, he seems like a good dude.
Yes.
You know how you could just sort of like sometimes you make your own judgment by just listening to a guy, and you feel like, what, I think a lot of times it's probably correct. Some guys sound like kind of a jerk, but or maybe he is a little bit. Freddie Freeman just sounds like a really nice guy.
Yep. How about when Ken Rosenthal asked him about the moment, and brings his son up, and he kind of got choked up.
Sure.
And then he points to where his dad was sitting.
Yeah.
And he said, "This moment's for my dad too, who threw me BP when I was a kid and all that." I mean, that's the beauty of sport too.
Yep.
It's pretty special.
You guys,
especially this sport.
How about Gleyber Torres missing a home run by a foot?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's like we forgot about that. Another foot, and that ball's out. We could do this all night. I think.
Look at the plays at second base.
Yeah.
And then making the great play to save a run. Then the misplay on Soto's throw, that short hops, and Otani goes to third. And then what we just said, the ball under the player's chest, his chest. That's all the second base.
That's crazy.
Is tonight's game the kind of game that wins fans? Because I think baseball's looking for this series to win fans, and not just in Japan, because I know this is winning lots of fans in Japan, but in America, do you think? Because I remember, I'm a lifelong Giants fan. I'm always going to be a Giants fan. I always was a Giants fan. My dad was a Giants fan. I can remember distinctly the 76 and 70 or 77 and 78 Yankees Dodgers series. There was something very electric about it. Howard Cosell was on the call. Oh, Reggie Jackson, have a night, or whatever he said. Cosell was memorable, right? Very, very special announcer. The the scene and, the fans running on the field at Yankee Stadium, the intensity, the hatred, the history of it going back. I became, I think, more of a baseball fan because of those two back-to-back series. And I didn't necessarily have any rooting interest, though I rooted for the Yankees. But, you know what I'm saying? It's like I kind of feel like certain games, not every year, but certain years, I think, are so iconic in some ways that they win over fans for generations. I feel like I was won over by Reggie Jackson with those 3 swings in 77, and I was only 7. And I bet you there's some kid out there that's probably going to be a baseball fan because of Freddie Freeman's shot tonight and the drama involved in this game. And I think that's an awesome thing for baseball, and they need more things like that. Is that just kind of maybe baseball wishful thinking, or me being kind of nostalgic or romanticizing this thing? Or do you actually think that a game, we see so many games, so many highlights, can one great game win over fans, you think? What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I think so. And you know what, guys? Baseball has made some pretty good strides the last couple years. Popularity's growing some. That younger audience that baseball's been trying to get to, they're starting to get to them. So I think the last couple of years, baseball has made some strides in popularity, and that's a good thing. And then you're going to put this World Series on top of that with the 2 teams that most people really want to see outside of the team that they're really rooting for. Now you can really show off these superstar players, which baseball hasn't always done a great job at, but I think they're getting better at that. So there's momentum. There's momentum in baseball coming into this season. And now you have a great season. You're going to have a great World Series. I think that's a really, really big deal for the game. And if they can capitalize on that, and I think they will, and you hope you have a nice long series. I hope it goes 7 games. I hope it's great. But I think this is going to help the popularity of baseball quite a bit, and put that on top of this kind of a little bit of a groundswell with baseball. It's coming back a little bit. I think it's headed in a really, really strong direction.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, it's this series tomorrow night's going to be very interesting because in 88, the Dodgers came back and won game 2, 6-0. The A's were flat that game, and it just, you could tell that took the life out of them. But the A's were really the underdogs. This is kind of wasn't, you look at it, it's pretty much an even going into it. So
the 88 A's weren't the underdogs. The 88 A's won 103 games. They were.
I'm sorry. I meant the Dodgers were the underdogs.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. I mean, the Dodgers. That's what made that thing so crazy. The Dodgers were not expected to win. So, but you look at this series. If tomorrow night it's Rodon versus Yamamoto, so if the Yankees can bounce back, then we have a real series. But if the Dodgers put them away tomorrow night, I think it may end no more than 6, but may end in 5, because tomorrow is going to be a real test for the Yankees to lose the way they lost. And I mean, oh gosh, I mean, a home run, a grand slam homer. I mean, whatever it was, if it was just went off the wall, but the home run factor just makes it all the more kind of like tough to take.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you set up Nestor Cortez to face Freeman. You brought him in to face Freddie Freeman. I don't know why he didn't bring in Tim Hill personally.
He's got the other guy too, Dan Meza. I mean, he had 2 other lefties down there that hadn't been used yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be questioned in of all places, New York. I mean, Aaron Boone, if they don't win this series, they're never going to forget that decision to bring in a guy who hasn't pitched since September 18th. Because the thing about when you don't pitch for that long, the one thing that goes is control.
Amen.
So you're Freddie Freeman, you're thinking, I'm looking for a fastball down the middle because he's got to throw a pitch over the plate, his first pitch, because if he doesn't find the strike zone, he's likely to walk Freddie.
You got it. And somebody besides Aaron, and you saw this. I thought that this was a possibility, and a lot of it played out. The Dodgers exploit other teams' hitters' anxiety. How many pitches did we see tonight, including by Aaron Judge, a tremendous guy and player, that he had no chance to hit, but swung anyway? And you know what you're going to see tomorrow? You're going to see the same thing out of Yamamoto. So, it's the momentum is solidly in one team's direction. And if you continue to expand the strike zone, and everybody talked about how the Yankees and the Dodgers rarely expand the strike zone. Well, let's take a look back. There's probably 15 swing and misses of pitches that were unhittable and would have been a call to ball. And Glenn, when it's a count of 1-0 instead of 0-1, or 2-1 instead of 1-2, changes the entire game.
Yeah, I'm counting. Yeah, the Yankees struck out 13 times.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot for them.
And Judge struck out the first 3 times. It did not look great. And they got a base in the 7th, but he had one pitch to hit in that 9th inning. He got a little hanger.
Yep.
And he jumped a little bit and he missed it. And then he ended up popping out to short. And it again, one pitch to hit, because
Right.
the pitches he was missing, he didn't get a lot to hit. He was a little anxious, I thought, but 2 on, 2 out in the top of the 9th, and he got a hanger from, I think it was Trinan, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
it was
Trinan.
Yeah. And Trinan doesn't, hang much, but he did. He gave him one to hit, missed it, and and then he made out, and that's it.
But he hit it high. He did hit it high in the infield.
He did, just missed it.
I thought this was an incredibly huge moment for the Dodgers, simply because Freddie Freeman sprained that ankle in late September, and
last game, I think, last weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
before the last weekend. Yeah.
I mean, if you looked at his numbers coming into tonight, I think he was like 7 for 35 or something like that in the postseason with no extra base hits. And to see him get off on the first game, I mean, I think that's a huge lift for LA. How do you think Yamamoto's going to handle the pressure, Ned? He's obviously got a crazy arsenal of stuff, and when you catch him on the right day, he looks like sometimes the best pitcher in the league. How does he handle pressure? How is he in big moments? Is he a nervous guy? I really don't know a lot are Yamamoto.
I think he'll be fine. One thing about this organization for a long, long time now, they are so together with everything they do that even if you are a little bit anxious or a little bit nervous about a situation, the people around you calm you down. And I think that he's going to be very good tomorrow night. I think that he's going to cause the Yankees, especially those guys that they're counting on, he's going to cause them trouble with the changeup and with pitches out of the zone. Like I said a couple minutes ago, I think he'll be fine.
Tonight, Flaherty pitching a gem tonight. That was huge for the Dodgers because if he got lit up like he did in Game 5 in New York, that would have been disastrous for the Dodgers because they would have had to go to the pen, and then they may have a bullpen coming up in Game 4, right? A bullpen game. They only have 3 starters, right? They got Yamamoto going, and then Buehler, and then they got to go to the pen.
The Yankees aren't out of this, but they need a better performance than tonight.
Now, I got a question for you that I think a lot of fans, especially Giants fans, I don't think the Giants have a shot at Soto, but if the Yankees go on to lose this and let's say Judge just doesn't perform at all in this World Series, does that have an effect on his free agency? You've been around teams and when free agents, if there's a bad ending to this series for the Yankees, does that affect the Yankees or Soto maybe saying, hey, look, I want to move on?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be the numbers he hears.
And it's
Yeah.
going to be one of the New York
It's
New York
be the
teams.
money. I can't believe it's going to be the money.
I don't-
Believe it or not, it might be the money. I mean, it's going to be a good team too, though. I
Yeah,
mean, he'll-
It's probably going to be the Mets or the Yankees. It's going
But
to be.
he's going to look at the Yankees and listen. The Yankees they're really good, and they're going to be. They're always going to be good, competitive, or they're going to try. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think he probably enjoys playing there. You know what? I shouldn't say it because I don't know that, but he's going to go where he can look at it. I think he knows what it's like in New York. So if he likes it there, he's going to get a big offer from the Yankees, I would think. I don't see him coming to the Giants. I
don't either.
You know, we kind of go through this every year, and I don't even know if it's right to sign a guy for 15 years, $600 million. I don't know that that's the right thing to do. I don't know. It sounds good, but
yeah.
How are you going to feel if he signs with the Dodgers?
What's that?
Oh no! Don't even say it. Ned, I will say this.
Don't count Mark Walter out.
Behind
right.
every good playoff team, there's some lefty reliever who just figured it out and became super nasty. And it's like, every year it's like, and sometimes it's a guy that comes from nowhere and returns from nowhere. I bring this up because Anthony Banda, has been everywhere. I mean, I think the Giants might have had him. I think they DFA'd him. He's been on a bunch of teams. He has been really, really good this year. Lefties are hitting like 218 off him during the regular season. He came out of the pen tonight. I mean, that's a nasty guy. I mean, you're talking about a guy who you want to go up against Soto in a key spot. I would like, if I was Roberts, I think I'd like Banda on Soto more than once in key moments in this series. How do they utilize Banda? Because they went to him early, but I mean, his stuff is terrific, and you can see how he's death on lefties.
Yeah.
Well, he's another example of the way that the entire team approaches everything. Because you're right, he's been well traveled, as they say, but he's clicked there. Dave Roberts, like any manager, takes heat from time to time, but Dave Roberts has really managed, I think, stellar for years. It is not hard when the expectation is you win the last game in October or it's been a failure. And him and his staff, Mark Pryor, the pitching coach, and everybody else, they put guys more than anybody I've seen, except maybe Whitey Herzog years ago at St. Louis, in positions to succeed. And the confidence around a guy like that is amazing. Look at Vesia, too. Another guy. Florida had Vesia.
Yeah.
He was, no big deal for them. He's had a tough year last year, but 2 years ago was excellent. Came back from an injury. They've just got the knack of finding people and putting them in the environment that breeds success. Another guy.
Yeah, I agree. They turn guys around. Just one last comment on this Soto thing. I was thinking about it a little bit more.
Danny wants him.
I'm not even thinking about Giants. They have no shot. But I think in the Yankees retain him, and here's why. Without Soto, the Yankees are not that great of a team. No. They're really not. You look at them last year, they're borderline, playoff team. So they're going to do everything they can to keep Soto and Judge together because they were just a team that they're not going to the World Series without Soto. Forget it. So they're not going to let him go. No. And it's going to be a bidding war between the two owners of New York. It's going to be pretty wild.
And the Dodgers.
Right. Yeah,
the Dodgers. The Dodgers want to get their hand in. That would be interesting. They might force a salary cap, Ned. They better not do that.
Let's hit a couple of these super chats here. People have donated money for their comments to be read. Fuji Simeon says, walk-off grand slam by Freddie Freeman, someone who turned down the Giants as a free agent. Larry, would you do some live streams of Giants games next season? I will.
Only if they're entertaining.
I did a few this year, but I didn't do enough. I did a lot more Niners this year. I'll do some more Giants next year. I got to feel it, though. I got to feel it. You know what I mean? I have to feel that enthusiasm. Fuji Simeon says, any news of Buster Posey's GM search? candidates. Billy Owens is a friend of mine, and he sent me a text saying that he interviewed with Buster, that it went really well. He doesn't know exactly what direction Buster's going to go, that he feels like he nailed the interview. And I don't know a lot about the candidates or where the Giants are or where Buster is in the process. I got to think that he probably would like to get this done pretty soon, because 5 days after the World Series, the off season just hits the ground and it's moving. And I'm sure he would want somebody in place, but I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's already made the choice and he's just waiting for the series to end.
Yeah, I mean,
you think so?
That is MLB pretty strict on that. I know it's sort of an unwritten rule. Don't make any big announcements during our World Series. I mean,
yeah, they are strict on that. Plus, the Giants want the audience.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know either, but my guess is they probably have a pretty good idea who it's going to be. I don't know who that may be, but we'll find out soon enough.
Do you think Buster would want somebody who's done the job before, or somebody who's in the organization currently, or what do you think? If you had to guess along with a guy we don't really have it, he has no track record of doing this, so I guess it's hard, almost maybe futile to try to guess. But what do you think? We know he's a proud Giant. He believes in the Giant tradition, but it doesn't mean he's going to hire somebody internally. He might feel like he wants somebody from outside. What do you guys think?
It could be again another thought. It could be two people. I don't know, but I think that's maybe a possibility.
The A's had 3 assistant general managers, different departments they had.
I think Buster would like somebody who has the ability to stand in front of the camera and say, this is what we're doing. I don't know that he wants to do that all the time. I think he'll do it some, but I do think, you'd probably like somebody who, will meet with the media and talk about what's going on some. But like I said, it could be they hire a couple people. I don't think that's out of the question either.
Are they, because they named Buster president of baseball ops, and to bring a GM, that's a lateral move. Are they forced to pretty much go for an assistant GM at this point? Because hiring a GM from another team who's actual GM, that's a lateral move, right? Don't they have to have There's
different titles, aren't there, Ned?
Buster's the president. That's how it usually happens. If you're going to hire a GM, you're going to make them the president of baseball ops. Well, Buster's the president of baseball ops.
Right.
So the chances are it's an assistant GM, or it's somebody who was a GM who's not a GM today. Kim Ng.
Thad Levine.
Yeah, but I wouldn't dismiss Kim. I think Buster and I think the organization needs somebody that has done just about every job in the organization on the baseball side. Buster's probably learning a million miles an hour day after day, and that's not going to stop for a while. I don't care if you've been a GM before, that's the kind of job it is. So I think that they'd be wise to find somebody that's got a handle on scouting. Obviously, they've talked about that. Amateur, international, professional, and also has a feel for player development, and it has a feel for dealing with the media. All these different things. I think that's where they go.
Ned, did you hire
Kim
Kim as your assistant GM, or your GM under you, Kim?
She was an assistant GM under me. I mean, she was there when I got there.
Oh, she was there.
We had some conversations of me moving up to a president role, and I would have made her the GM.
What's her strengths, Ned? What's at the top of her list? She's got a very good resume, I know. Yeah, but what are her strengths as a GM?
She's smart. She's seen so much. Been in high pressure situations. Been with teams that Miami was kind of an outlier for. She worked for the Yankees and the Dodgers after the White Sox. She's well versed in just about everything, and she's seen a lot. She's University of Chicago grad, and somebody that's really smart, really experienced, got a good, calm personality as well. I think there's a lot of reasons why you'd be satisfied and happy to if it was Kim.
It seems like baseball's in a area now where these organizations have a number of guys. There's Billy and there's Forrest. There's Dombrowski and there's somebody else. There's guys that have done the job, and the Yankees did that for years with Gene Michael and Al Rosen, but not other teams didn't necessarily have X guys who actually had done that job. But now that seems to be more commonplace, that there's tiers of general managers, and there's guys who have done it yesteryear, and then younger guys, and then younger guys than that. How would you describe what we're seeing now, Ned? Because it's definitely there's more jobs. There's more people splitting up the work. I don't know how they split it up.
Yeah, well, it's a big gig. I mean, it's massive, and it's just it gets bigger with expectation. But yeah, it gets split up a lot of different ways, far more than when Sabes and I were in San Francisco. It was Sabes, myself, Dick Tidrow, and a younger Bobby Evans, a younger Jeremy Shelley, a younger Yeshaya Goldfarb. I mean, that was Matt Nerlin, God bless him. That was our staff basically. For a large portion of it.
Could Shelley take over?
You know what? I'll tell you a story I haven't told many people. When I got the GM job in LA, I called Sabes for permission to talk to Jeremy. I called him for permission on one person, Jeremy. And Sabes, when my recollection of the conversation was a little bit of small talk, and then I said, I want to ask permission to talk to Jeremy. I'll make him an assistant general manager, and with the idea that we'll continue to grow him, and we'll pay him, commensurate with the position. And it was quiet. Sabes had no response, which I took as I know where this is going. And
he wasn't happy with that.
No. And then he, I'm not sure if it was that call or one that followed 5 minutes later, where he said, no, we're not going to do that. I think Jeremy Shelley is one of the most capable, honest, integrity-filled, talented people I've ever been around in the game. He is, you could trust even 25 years ago. I came to San Francisco, believe it or not, 30 years ago this November.
Wow.
And he was
he must have been a pretty young man in the game at that point too, huh?
Oh yeah, he was just out of Santa Clara, and he was just always impressive. You always knew that you were going to get quality, and a lot of what you look for is reliability, and somebody who's going to be there when everybody else is left, and somebody you could give an assignment they've never done before, and they're going to do it better than 90% of the people who've done it before. And that's Jeremy. I mean, he is so capable and so smart. I had dinner with him this past spring, and we caught up, and he was actually in one of my classes too. He was one of the guest speakers in it, and I just think the world of him. I don't know what they think, but I'd hire Jeremy in a heartbeat.
He's from my hometown. He's from Concord.
Yes.
Yeah, I think whether he gets the actual GM job or not, he is going to be super involved, big time. I mean, that's the kind of guy that Buster's going to lean on, because Jeremy's he knows every in and out of the organization, and he's done everything that you can possibly do from a GM standpoint, even though he's the assistant GM. So I think it'd be great if he got the general manager job, but even if he doesn't, they're going to lean on him. Buster's going to lean on him big time, and he should, because Jeremy's he's a sharp guy.
One guy Buster should call is you, Ned, and I don't know that he has, but if he did call you and said, Ned, I'd like some just some basic advice. You've known him for a long time. You got great respect for him as a person, as a player. Obviously, I just asked you a very general question, so it's advice on what. But if you were advising him, just generally, what would be your first wisdom?
Well, I got to clear up a point. First of all, I've only had one conversation with Buster before he took this job, and that was during Mike Murphy's induction to the Giants Hall of Fame. And we spoke in the reception prior to it for maybe 10, 15 minutes. So that's the length of my pre-Buster as president of baseball ops interaction for him, besides, hating to see him come up against the team I was GMing, What would be my first? I don't know. I think and I'll be general with it. I think in leadership, it's imperative that everybody who is in your organization and on the side of the house you're working on, and to know their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, you really have to start there. And it's a lot if you're going to really do it in the right way, to know how everybody thinks, where their strengths are, where their strengths could be if you feed them different opportunities, or where they just fall short. You kind of got to start there. And you've got to really, like we talked many times on your show when we talk about, well, let's sign, they should sign Correa, they should sign Aaron Judge, or, they should sign, Soto a year, next in another month or so. You still got to develop pitching, and you've got to have pitching to be able to compete. You look at the teams that they had that won the World Series, look at the starting pitching that they had, look at the bullpen that they built. That's where it's all at. So to be truly honest with your organization and in your evaluation of who's in your organization, both in uniform and out of uniform, is one of the most important things you have to do. You cannot overrank your own players. You have to be really true to your organization to know who can and who can't. And that's the key thing. And as a catcher and really a guy with a great mind for the game, that's not going to take him long to figure out, especially on the pitching side and on who competes and who doesn't. But to know who you can count on, and when you can really count on them, not for a month of Major League Baseball, but for 6 months and maybe a seventh. That's where I think you have to start. There's two things. There's knowing your people in and out of uniform, knowing them inside and out, and knowing how they think and how they react, and really evaluating your player development and your big league team, but really your player development, where they're sitting in fourth place right now. To really evaluate where are our prospects, how good are they? Are they championship caliber? Are they big league players, which is still hard to do, but are they championship caliber? This guy played on 3 World Series champions, so he knows what it takes. But you got to be able to evaluate that and sort it out. And there may be somebody that's got huge value on the outside that you don't think is going to be a great Giant, and you don't think is going to play in the month of October or the month of September to get you to October in a high pressurized environment that does great. You got to sort that out, and you got to really know that and trust that. And that's where you start your build, and that's where you start to know who's who.
We've been going for an hour and 8 minutes. I only want to go for another 5 minutes, but I do have to share the screen here and show this. This obviously is the game winner. This is what we've been talking about a lot tonight. This is Freddie Freeman. And here's my question. Why is it that every left-handed hitter can hit down and in? I mean, my son is lefty.
It's their swing path. It's a natural.
My son is lefty. If I threw him down and in, he ripped it. High school kids hit down and in. College. Look at this pitch from Cortez to Freddie Freeman, and look at this. This is absolutely down and in. It's just right there, inner half. Why? And once again, look at the placement of this pitch. And that's just right down the middle, but a little bit on the inside portion there.
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not a good excellent as an old baseball guy. I do know that for whatever reason, most left-handed hitters have a little loop in their swing.
Yep.
Now, why they have a loop in their swing is what you want to know, Larry. I don't have an answer for that, but there is a little loop because most left-handed hitters struggle with the ball up.
Right.
But,
like if you pitch them above the waist,
yeah. So if you got a
know,
little
they
loop,
can't hit it.
yeah. I mean, I always used to chuckle watching Mike Trout when I was with the A's. Mike Trout swung like a left-handed hitter. He had a little loop in his swing, but he could also hit the ball up because he's Mike Trout. But I don't know why they have a loop, Larry. So I can only give you 50% of the answer. Ned, why do left-handed hitters have a loop?
Why is the hot spot for lefties down and in all the time? And why can't people pitch away from down and in to a lefty? It's amazing.
Apparently, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy. It is not easy. A couple more supers, and then we'll have a couple final thoughts. Mark Graves says, Ned, why did they walk the winning run into scoring position where a single beats you?
Well, they moved the runners up because Verdugo fell into the stands.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, they didn't. It wasn't first and second, and then they walked somebody. It was second and third.
That's true. First base was open. Fuji Simeon says, I wonder what the viewership numbers the World Series will generate internationally and domestically. Japan's viewership numbers. Japan is Dodger turf now. There's no question that the Ohtani and the Yamamoto signing gave them inroads into, the fans there. I'm sure there's more Dodger fans there than probably any other team in the big leagues.
I got to believe the numbers, the viewing numbers for this World Series are going to be huge. Obviously in Japan, but I'm talking about here at home as well. I think they're going to be massive.
That's a good one right there. Maple Leafs.
Freddie grew up in a house divided. Mom was a Maple Leafs fan. Dad was a Red Wings fan.
That's right up your alley, Ned.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Also,
Larry, on the lefty thing, saw it yesterday. I think it was on Dan Patrick's show that Randy Johnson was asked, how would you pitch to Shohei? And he talked about this left-handed swing that most left-handers have, that you don't want to throw down and in. He said, I would throw them up or away with, sliders away, but never come down and in, because a lefty swing path, that is the spot. That's their sweet spot. And, obviously Cortez didn't hear that, wasn't watching Dan Patrick yesterday.
You know why, Dan? You know why, Dan? Because the bases were loaded and he didn't want to fall behind in the count.
Exactly. He had to come in, and he hadn't pitched in a month.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I've seen guys that go 5-6 days that are in the bullpen that haven't pitched, and they can't find the strike zone. Baseball is a game of rhythm. That's why relievers, your closer never wants to go more than 1 or 2 days rest at the most.
Awesome stuff, guys. I think we're going to call it right here, because I don't want to, burn the midnight oil too late with anybody. But thanks for coming on. Great stuff. Danny, of course, everybody join Danny's YouTube channel, which is NorCal Sports Network. Hit a like and subscribe for Danny. He does a great job. And comes on after a lot of baseball games and talks a lot of Giants baseball.
All 162. I'm a glutton for punishment. Covering the Giants for 162 is rough.
Glenn, it's awesome to see you. I'm a huge fan of yours. You know that we worked together. I can remember when you and I did post games together.
Yeah.
And it's like at Candlestick. And it's funny, Ned. It's funny, some of these things that you didn't have necessarily an appreciation for at the time, that I do have an incredible appreciation for today, is that Glenn and I would do some of the Giant post games after the wrap. And this is when Lon was, still very much a part of the Giants broadcast team and was doing a lot of games. So, it would be Kruk, Kuiper, Lon, John, and these guys are yucking it up and having a great old time. And, Kuiper's, your brother's eating peanuts and throwing shells at people, and they're just having a good old time. Yeah. And just being in the back room there waiting to come on. some of my greatest memories from my early days at KMBR, just how kind those guys were to me, how much they promoted that we would be on, and just how lucky I was as a 26-year-old, 27-year-old to be sitting in the room with these legends coming on after them. I know you appreciated it, I'm sure, Glenn, at the time, but man, I don't think I really did have the appreciation for where I was and who I was around at that point, but I do now. And especially my dad who's no longer with us, but he was such a Lon Simmons fan. And I remember a couple times after, you and I would come on, he'd be like, I'd see my dad over the weekend. He'd be like, hey, Lon Simmons was on right before you and Glenn came on. Were you in the same room with him? Like, yeah, Dad, they're right there. Oh,
I love Lon.
Couldn't believe it. Just could not believe.
Grew up with him in the early, late 60s, early 70s. Just way back, way back. Tell it goodbye. That was his call. I loved his call.
Great memories.
So, my first year, I get hired in the middle of November, a long time ago now. And we have there's a dinner, like a sponsors dinner at a restaurant right around Washington Square. And I meet Lon there. First time, I've known him, I've watched him, or, I know who he is, but first time we ever, really meet. And he's sitting next to me. And I have on this, I didn't have many suits back then, I may have had one, and it was light. And we're sitting next to each other at dinner, and he's drinking red wine. And somebody does something, and he gets demonstrative, and he moves his arms around, and the red wine goes all over my suit. And he, he's apologetic, and feels bad, and I'm stuck. I'm living in a hotel. I don't have many things with me. I'm just stuck. And almost, I probably saw him 300 times after that. And every time he'd see me, he'd go, "Sorry about that suit."
What a sweetheart he was.
Lon was amazing to me because, I grew up in the early 60s and then grew up with Lon as a 7-8-year-old listening to Transistor. My father passed away when I was 6 months old. So Lon was like a father figure to me.
Oh, wow.
Growing up, listening to those games. When I heard he passed away, I cried, man. It was like his voice was so comforting to me through my early years, because I just sat with a little transistor radio under my pillow every night and listened to Lon Simmons and Russ Hodges, and it was just, he had that soothing voice. Just that
he had voice. Unbelievable pipes. My two Lon memories were just amazing. One was like a broadcasting memory. So me and Chris Townsend are doing the sports weekend insiders. It's like 1998. We get to spring training for a spring training game. We're coming on before the broadcast. So we flew in like first thing. So we get to Arizona, Phoenix, like at 7:00 in the morning. Get our rental car, go right to Scottsdale Stadium. It's now like 7:30, and we walk into Scottsdale Stadium. There's nobody. It's dark. There's nobody around. And finally, a guard lets us in. We walk into the press, that whole area. There's nobody in there. I see one light on in one of the booths. So I walk in, and there's Lon Simmons at 7:30 in the morning highlighting a Colorado Rockies media guy. and I said, "Oh, Mr. Simmons, how you doing? I'm Larry Krueger from KMBR." And I go, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, well, you know what? It's my first Cactus League game, and I don't know anything about the Rockies, so I got their media guide, and I'm in here highlighting it." And I'm thinking to myself, you have been doing this for so long that you could easily get away with just showing up, as the game starts, and and just winging it, and people would have thought it's awesome. But that's the work ethic that taught me, like, oh, wait a second, this guy's already made it, and yet it's 7:30 in the morning. It's 4 hours before his broadcast, and he's highlighting a media guide because he's that serious about his craft. That was an eye opener. And the other one was the Cardinals are playing the Giants in I forget what year it was, and Bob Agnew's like, "Hey Kruger, I need you to host Tony La Russa ARF foundation thing at Silverado, and the Cardinals are part of it, and I just need you to go up to Silverado. I'll pay for your room and just go up there and host from 7 to 10, and I'll tell you about it later." I said, "Okay." So I get up there, and I realize right around 6:30. Lee J's like, "You ready for this?" And I'm Lee Jones, the great engineer. And I go, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You're emceeing this thing." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, it's just a dinner. But it's Lon, La Russa, the late Jack Buck, Bill DeWitt, the owner of the Cardinals, and Mike Shannon."
Oh, the announcer for the Cardinals. Broadcast.
That's quite a group, isn't it? That's a hell of a group. And I'm thinking to myself, and so they just, and then Lee Jones is like, "Hey, I'm just joking with you. All you need to do is crack the mic, introduce everybody, and just get out of the way, and then just take it to the break. You're not really going to be doing anything." So I did it, and Agnew calls at 10 o'clock at 9:50. He's like, "Kruger, I don't care what it is. I'll pay you. Stay till midnight. Keep going. This is too good." Because Jack Buck telling stories with Lon Simmons and Tony La Russa and Bill DeWitt and Mike Shannon, and them talking about get up, the origin of Mike Shannon's get up. His home run call, and Jack Buck talking about his theories on broadcasting, and Lon Simmons with his dry humor. And it was amazing. Amazing. I sat there. I remember Lee Jones at midnight was like, "Man, that was 5 hours, but that was 5 amazing freaking hours." We went from 7 to midnight with these guys just talking baseball in a room at Silverado, and that
was the best.
My favorite memories, man. It just so, and it was so special. It's like I didn't realize at the time how special that moment was, but it was incredible.
Wow,
that was one of the best parts of the game.
Sports does, man.
Yep, sitting around talking.
And you know what?
Great to see you. Great to see you.
It's great to see you.
My best to your family and brothers. And when you see Eck, tell him I said hello.
Absolutely.
Probably remember me, but he was one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, and you know what? I still think about meeting you and Brian for the first time, and you guys were intimidating. We were intimidated by you guys, and then it turns out, once you got to know Sabes, he was the best. And then, once you got to know Ned, like you guys were cool, man. You guys were cool. Everything you did for the Giants, well deserved. You guys were awesome. And,
thank you.
We miss you guys.
40 years in the game, my best times were those times.
Yeah. You guys did a good job.
That is going to do it for us. Danny, thank you. Glenn, thank you. Ned, thank you. Glenn, huge fan of your work. We fully expect you're going to be back on top again, my friend. And we wish you nothing but success and love and great health going forward. Thanks to Ned. Thanks to Glenn. Thanks to Danny. That does it for us. Have a great night. Go Yankees.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.